The following is an ESG 360 video.
It being the beginning of the year, it's time to talk about some predictions for the upcoming calendar year. And I'm here with Mark Bowker, and we're going to talk about mobility and mobile security. And Mark, one of the things where I wanted to start and get your perspective on is the login experience. You know, I know. I mean, I'm having a hard time remembering all my passwords, got to be honest with you. As we are multi-device users using multiple applications, how do we balance, sort of reducing the friction in the login experience, but it still being enterprise class, enterprise ready?
It's super interesting, right? It's a huge problem. First of all, I'm going to kind of give you the punchline. I believe passwords are going to go away because of what you said. People forget their password. It's cumbersome to enter a password into these devices. As incredible as they are, entering a password in or being prompted and everything else it impacts the user experience. So I think what you'll really see is that device we all carry around in our pocket is extremely powerful. It knows an awful lot about us, right? Even down to our movements and our behavior.
How long it's going to take to drive home?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see that type of telemetry being tapped into more. But then I also see things that, like out in the standards industry, I look at something like what FIDO is doing, right? So here's the ability to be able to maintain the authentication on that phone, to not prompt for a password, and to be able to authenticate through integration with the apps that you're using, the devices that you're using, and the management solutions you're using. So a user should be able to put their fingerprint in, or their facial recognition. It should recognize who they are. It should authenticate with that device, and off they're going without the password.
You bet. So the phone really becomes sort of the basis to establish trust.
Sure.
And using various types of biometrics.
Absolutely.
To really authenticate that you are in fact who you are.
You got it.
Device.
You got it. And you'll see the same thing on laptops, right? You'll see the same thing where people can use their fingerprint on the laptop or facial recognition on the laptop. It may have a hardware key in the laptop to make sure that is truly you. You got it, exactly.
Sure. Yeah. Good. So streamline the whole sort of interface, less friction, but also enterprise ready.
You got it.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So hey, when we think about these mobile devices, we're all enamored with the touchscreen interface.
Yeah.
With things like Alexa and Siri, more and more is becoming voice driven.
Right.
How do you see that playing out as sort of an interface for these devices moving forward?
Super fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It really is. These devices have made it into our home. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's Alexa, it is Siri, it is Google Home, Cortana to a point, which are really become this platform to recognize our voices. What I think is extremely cool as well is if those devices now can recognize that's Doug speaking versus that's Mark speaking. So that has some super interesting impact just by having it personalize what you're doing. I see a couple interesting business use case scenarios, right? What about IT support? What about being able to have voice, whether it's on your device that you're using or having these devices around this new workplaces that people are creating, where I can get support directly through that device? So using voice, driven through some type of even bot technology, that's tied into some help desk ticketing system may give you access to experts, for example, on the back end of that aren't hand in hand, face to face. Like when I was in IT, I used to have to grab my bag, walk out to the end user, put in my CDs, whatever I needed to do. Right. But now I can imagine there's use cases where that becomes interesting. I see the hotel industry use it already. You walk into these rooms that are automated, that you start giving voice commands, open and close the shades, turn on and off the lights.
Right.
Hey, what about airline reservations? Can start to use that type of input as that next means to capture information. So I don't imagine where you have an office full of workers and they're all walking around talking into their devices. That's just not going to be practical and work.
No.
But I do imagine where there are set locations or set scenarios where these devices are in place and people will interact with them. I see my kids do it already, and that's how they're learning to work.
Yeah, it's an incredible set of use cases that are possible. I like the one about customer support, right? So we can sort of streamline that process and not have to go through multiple prompts to be able to actually get to human being. You can just automate and get to your answer faster.
That's right.
So voice activation, voice-driven smart devices really open up a wide variety of use cases. I mean, just sort of endless possibilities. It's going to be really interesting over the next year or two to sort of see these use cases come to market.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so when we think about mobile security and endpoint security, it's another balancing act like we talked about before.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want a lot of friction in the world here
Right.
because we have empowered end users that have multiple devices. They like the experience with their mobile devices,
Yep.
yet they are accessing corporate assets via those devices. So how do we think about balancing those two objectives, the end user experience and sort of the corporate security requirement?
It really is the magic, right? And the other problem, I'll call it, that you have a lot of people that are using these devices that really feel like they're security experts. And
That's scary.
it is scary, right? They feel like, they have the latest patch and they know what the vulnerabilities are.
Yeah.
And I look at that and both of us look at that and say, okay, we're pretty in tune with these things. And I don't even feel like I'm an expert on that device. So I think when I talk to a lot of IT pros out there, I really see them and give them advice to really start looking at some of the intelligence in the cloud. Think about Microsoft, think about Google, think about Amazon, Oracle, kind of these big enterprise kind of cloud providers. And think about the intelligence they have on threats and how companies could leverage that intelligence to, yes, maybe that executive does think they know everything about security, but what if they can recognize the typical scenario you see out there, right? Doug just logged on in Massachusetts, but wait a second, 10 minutes later, he's logged on in Japan. That
Right.
can't happen. We need to take action. So that's a typical one. But I think leveraging the intelligence of those cloud providers is going to be very important. And you will see enterprises start to tap into that intelligence really beginning this year very quickly, I think.
They've got so much telemetry and
crazy.
data about how we normally operate
That's right.
that they're well positioned to detect things that are anomalous that could be indicative of some sort of compromise, real insider threat.
And you
or
see the
compromised
threats
brand.
out there, right? They aren't for pretend, they're real, right?
They're for real, and for me, when it comes to mobile, those threats are really all about stealing credentials.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like you can't have malware on a mobile device, but that's not really the main objective of hackers when they're targeting mobile devices. They're really after our identity.
Of course.
And they're going to fool us in trying to, IM phishing, OAuth protocol for layered applications, different ways to sort of dupe us into entering our credentials, steal our credentials, and then off they go. And then you detect
Yeah.
somebody logging in from an anomalous location,
There you
anomalous
go.
hours, different sort of activity.
And you can take that action. There's very few companies I talk to that are sophisticated enough with their tools that they've traditionally had that can tap into that type of intelligence or have that intelligence themselves that couldn't benefit from tapping into intelligence. Now that I've essentially, as an IT person, I've lost control of the device, right? So since I've lost control of the device and really the apps, why can't I get now? I've got to have more information on that user
Yep.
so I can take some proactive measurement should something bad happen.
Got it. So I've lost some control. I need to gain some control. I can partner with my cloud service provider
You got it.
to gain some of that control, visibility, normal action, anomalous activity.
You got it.
Mark, a lot of good stuff. Very much an intersection between security and mobility coming in 2018. And we certainly look forward to sharing more with the market moving forward.
Absolutely.